Good morning, Liberseed. It's Josh here. It's a beautiful morning, the sun's about to rise, and I'm walking outside thinking about schooling versus homeschooling. Now, I went to school in the UK, and I was actually very good at school. I was a straight A student, and the system kind of worked for me. I was able to kind of sit down and study, and I was interested in enough of the subjects that I could actually go and learn that, and I could listen to the teachers and so forth. The teachers were likable, and I think I was likable for the teachers, so they put the time and effort into me, and I'm very grateful for that. However, I did see that there was a lot of other people who struggled. It wasn't kind of the norm of, I wasn't the norm. So there was lots of kids that couldn't behave properly. The teachers kind of didn't like them, despised them for that, and some people didn't have the attention span of an hour or 2 hours to sit down and study, and which is generally quite difficult to have the focus. So now I've got children, I have to come to the decision of whether I want to send my kids to school. My first son is in nursery, so he's young, and we're kind of seeing behavioural differences when he's at the nursery compared to when he's at home. He's picking up bad things, and I think overall you have to make a pros and cons list as to whether schooling or homeschooling is good. Like, you know what Liberseed's all about. It's all about the community. It's all about raising kids with knowledge and good practical skills that set them up for life, not just what institutions tell us that is needed, and not what the government necessarily tells us that we should be learning or teaching our kids. Also having control. So I am very much an advocate of homeschooling, and that's what I plan to do with my kids. I think that the school system is designed to raise obedient children into adults who are just smart enough to work the machines and do the basic jobs, but just dumb enough to just continue doing it. And I think homeschooling with proper socialization across different age groups as well, because I think at schools, you go to school and you got your year group, and then you kind of interact with people your own age, which is good for peer-to-peer socialization and assessing each other's behaviors. But it's not good when you're not interacting with somebody who's a few years older than you or a few decades older than you, because with your homeschooling you can spend more time with different generations and slightly older people, slightly younger people, and you learn how to socialize with them. I think the school system leaves out a hell of a lot of important things. They don't teach you about finances properly, and the reason why is because they don't want you to learn about it. The basic life that a human being lives now is in a modern brick-built house. You have plumbing systems, you've got electrical systems, you've got gas systems for the majority of people. In schools, they don't teach you any of that. So your basic living standards, you're required to outsource the labour to somebody else who's actually learnt it, again, outside of the education system. Then I think the school system is terrible for implementing, because they slightly educate you. It depends on what school you go and what area, I guess. But to implement some sort of good diet and exercise routines, I think the schools, generally you go into the schools and the food that they serve is pretty poor, and the exercise routines is usually 2 or 3 times a week. And I think just the fact of going into the school, sitting down, having certain time when you go and eat is very structured. I know a lot of people like that structure, but I think ultimately you don't need it. You don't need if you think about the natural world, you think about a lion. A lion will just go and eat when it gets an opportunity to eat, and so the rest of the day for a lion is filled by, I'm going out hunting. And so if you think about human life, what could be possibly optimal would be that you're so productive that when you eat, you will eat, you know? Like, if you think about when you go out for a day, maybe you go to a theme park and you're like, let's go on to this ride and let's go on to do this and let's go view this and interact with that. It'll come to the point where you and your family or your friends is just, I'm hungry, let's go and eat something. And so you go and eat. And so it wasn't the case that it got to 1 p.m. and it's time to go and eat. And I'm not suggesting that just because you're hungry you should go and eat, but you're probably not thinking about being hungry if you're so busy, and that's probably a good thing. There's an obsession with eating and having that structure. In schools, I think reinforces the idea that you eat 3 meals a day. There's no such thing as fasting. You can't fast with your kids. I mean, fasting for like 16 hours, waking up. It's intermittent fasting, waking up, not eating till like midday, only eating till 6 p.m. and then doing that repeatedly. You can't really do that in a school. The school itself and the government is going to be like, well, why are you not feeding your children? Because that's not their value system. And schools are mostly there to install the government's value system of whatever kind of political power is in place, but really it's the desires of the puppet masters of the political powers, right? So it doesn't matter if the left is in power or the right's in power. It's the people who own them, the people who are the donors of the government who decide. And they decide the education system, and they decide what your kids are going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. And well, in the UK, I'm not sure about everybody else, but you don't really have privy to know prior to what your kid is going to be doing. People can come into the school, teach them kind of whatever they like, and there's many examples over the last few years that I don't need to go into as to people coming in and teaching your kids things that you don't like and you don't want them to learn, or you don't think it's the right age for them to learn it. So another thing that I think is very important is when I look at my own life. When I left higher education, it got to the point that I was able to learn more based on following my interests than I did learn when I was in an institution learning it. And I was able to read books. I got very interested in economics and finance, and I'm proud to say that my knowledge based on that is a lot better than a lot of people who would get a degree or a master's degree in economics and finance, and I would challenge people to that. I think where I was interested in it, I could just sit down and read and listen to so much about it for hours, for days, for years, and it would never get old for me, you know. And I think back to when I had to learn French at school when I was about 13, 14 years old, and it was just 3 hours a week, and that was just a time where I could just turn off, and I just switched off because I wasn't interested in it. I didn't grasp it. I wasn't as linguistically capable. And so if you was to homeschool your kids, you can do it following interest based. And so if your kid is interested in maths and you want to go deep dive into maths, you know, you can buy a few books, and if you got some access to the internet, you can look at a few like challenges online for maths and questions and stuff, and you can do it based on lots of practical examples. I experienced that a little bit in school through physics, where I was kind of doing maths with a practical reason, and that was good. That was good for me. But maths in general in schools is there's nothing practical about it. There's just a question of solve this algorithm, or do a bit of algebra or whatever it might be. And I think at home you could be a little bit more relevant to the life that you're living. I also think that there's a lack of community structure. This is where I mentioned that you don't interact with other generations. My neighbour is a carpenter, and we love him to bits. He's kind of the older generation now, than me, is the age of my father, sort of thing. And he loves our kids, and he loves interacting with them, he loves showing them things, he likes to almost like play fight in a way and play with sticks and stuff. And I can just see how he's going to be teaching bits of carpentry, as he does to me, but also to my kids. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. And you think about kind of a Liberseed community and the idealization there, where you're not just going to school with people you don't know, who have values that don't align with yours, and they're going to be teaching your kids whatever the government tells them to teach you, where you could be in your community of people who are like-minded and similar values, and they've got skills that they can share, and they can spend their time, and you've got the time because you're not sending your kids to school. You've got the time for your kid to go learn these other skills and interact with people of other generations and other ages as well. Well, I think that kind of sums it up. I don't think school's good. I don't think you have control. I don't think you can lead by interest. And I think it's very time restricted. It's very structured. And I think you could do a lot more with your time, with the freedom of that. Whereas Josh, thank you very much for listening. Catch you in the next one.